Greetings one and all, I'm Red Angel, and welcome to another episode of I Love It Anyway, a series where I talk about the media I love, or in this case like, that is inherently flawed, but I enjoy it despite this fact. A pseudo-review and analysis, if you will. Today we are talking about Star Varnir. Stop me if you've heard this one. A young man is severely traumatized by the death of his parents at the hand of some miscellaneous monster, or in this case a dragon, and vows to avenge them by joining the side of the courageous knights seeking to purge the world of dragons and the witches who control them. Upon having the ever-loving tar beaten out of him, he's saved by a magical kiss from a witch, transforming him into what he was inside the whole time. A witch boy. No, not that one, but it's a good read. Also on the banned books list in the States in case you'd like to read something to spite some lawmakers. Ah yes, this thing. And he needs to work with the witches he used to hunt in order to survive. He must find out what's truly going on in the world and possibly learn how to save it. Of course, the knights are corrupted, and even the royalty Zephy once revered turns out to be in power for devious reasons. Oh, I forgot to mention, every single one of the relevant main characters has a dragon growing inside them that threatens to consume them at any time. Good thing we only see the characters' individual dragons and their anime transformation super attacks during combat. Though it does have some of the worst ADR I have heard in a game in quite a while.
I sense the dragon! Power of the dragon!
What?
Lend me your power!
I can't hear you over the sounds of the Lovecraftian horror growing inside you and your weird outfits. Now, if at this point you've already said, Star Varnir's plot sounds a lot like X game, anime, and or book, then congratulations, you've consumed media before. My snarkiness aside, I will say conceptually wise they've made an intriguing case for themselves. A madness mechanic in a JRPG accompanied by the potential of being consumed by the dragon inside you, the very dragon that's been giving you the power to fight this whole time. You have to admit that sounds fascinating enough to at least give it a look. Last year I picked this game up on sale on the PS4 for $11.99. I went into this completely blind, not knowing it was from the famous yet infamous people at Compile Heart. The only thing I knew is that I saw a trailer that reminded me of the old AMVs from the late 2000s that clearly said, "Look at these girls, don't you wanna smooch 'em? Also, there may be some trauma in store." And guess what? Character trauma causes madness. Depending on your dialogue decisions and your commitment to another gameplay aspect that I'll mention later, it will help change your madness rating. As for the other factors that might flip the switch, it's debated online precisely what they are, ranging from fainting when you're in dragon form or suffering TPKs and pressing continue. Onto some story bits. Zephy comes into the fold of witches, distrusted because he used to be their enemy, and he's a man. There's never been a man witch before. Woo! Plot. We get to see how each individual develops to warm up to him after a while. There's actually a mechanic to give them gifts to raise their affection levels with you, and unlock their voice-acted cutscenes starring their beautiful JPEG images. I know this is entirely for budgetary reasons, because there's a lot of dialogue in this game, resembling more of a visual novel than anything else sometimes. But I'll admit, it does take me out of it to see minor sparklies or fireball special effects without seeing any character move across the screen. Or when a character is going to physically interact with another character, instead of models moving around like a typical cutscene in a modern-day JRPG, everything is still in this picture format. The image is often dragged across the screen over to the other image and lightly rubbed across the other PNG. The developers really couldn't have done any sort of art that involved physical interaction for these scenes. A lot of this is the equivalent of 9-year-old Red Angel smashing her Mulder and Scully dolls together and saying, "Now kiss." We'll circle back to the romance in a minute or two, though, because I want to talk about the gameplay, which is surprisingly fun, if not a little grind-heavy. You have 4 party members at any time. You'll be fighting in the air in any assorted fight, which is separated in 3 quadrants, low, medium, and high. Depending on the location of the witches can affect how much damage you do to a monster. Suppose you dodge an attack and manipulate the system just right. In that case, you can force the enemies to run into your trap spells. Each physical physical attack has a different attacking attribute, depending on the witch, and each spell has a different elemental attribute, depending on which magic you have equipped. Each witch specializes in a different kind of magic, but each witch can use all of the magic in the game. Combat can be rock, paper, scissors in nature, so exploiting the enemy's weak spot with a magical or physical attack is recommended for quick and easy fights. There is also a meter that you need to watch measuring how close your characters are to transforming into their dragon selves, which not only gives them a boost in all of their abilities, but a super duper attack in form of their Devour mechanic. Let's talk more about that particular mechanic, shall we? You have the option of ending a fight early with the Devour ability, which gives the dragon-cursed maidens and lad a chance to learn magic they normally wouldn't be able to get from a natural level up. Each monster you devour gives you Devour points. The more Devour points a character has, the more skills, the more spells, and attributes they can get. I like that the combat and leveling has many layers to it because it adds a unique complexity to the game. Again, I haven't played that many Idea Factory / Compile Heart games, so if they're all like this, excuse my ignorance. The music in this game, the battle theme, is absolutely stellar, and the boss themes amp up the danger levels of the combat in general. Speaking of that, the boss fights are a special highlight that I wanted to touch upon because I think that's easily the strongest part of the game as a whole. Each of their designs are unique and fantastical, which includes the more difficult hidden bosses. The story beats that focus on them are always the most compelling parts of the entire game. Every dragon is a much higher level than you, no matter what you do. And you have to be incredibly strategic when you fight them. With those 3 levels you fight on while flying on your brooms, there are 3 levels to the boss's body. Each level enables the boss to cast a different spell. It's up to you to prioritize which ability is more important for you to knock out first. Do you want to knock out that big bad attack that can reduce your witches to a smattering of red jam on the forest floor? Or do you want to be sure that the boss can't heal themselves? Play smart or die trying. That's always been the name of the game in Star Varnir. Though you have to grind a little in order to get any of the bells and whistles you'd expect in most JRPGs. This of course means grinding during story missions, after which you unlock each area that you can revisit at any time to get those levels, and make your team of witches the best they can be. No problem, right? Pretty easy, right? Do you think Idea Factory likes you? Aha! Oh-ho! No, they do not, because they put a massive burden on you, i.e. the Little Sisters. Once you reach chapter 5 of the story. Don't get me wrong, I think that the Little Sisters' inclusion in the narrative causes an impact for each of their big sisters, i.e. the main party. I like them as characters in the background and little creatures that rely on you to return home. The problem is, you will barely be able to complete a dungeon without them complaining about how hungry they are, so you have to feed them dragon pieces that you could be using to get better gear. Not only that, but you have to make sure that you don't feed them too much, because that can also lead them to going mad and running away. This also means that grinding is almost certainly out of the question, or if you do, you have to continuously go back to check on them to be sure that they're not starving at this point where they turn into dragon monsters. Because if 2 out of the 3 girls do, you will be locked out of the best possible ending. This reminded me immediately of Pandora's Tower, which isn't a bad thing at all. I genuinely felt for the Little Sisters at first, and I wanted to do everything I could to help them. The only thing is that, unlike Pandora's Tower, you don't have a pre-established relationship with them like you do with Elena in Pandora's Tower. The Little Sisters are sort of generic anime little girl tropes. I still don't want them to get eaten from the inside out and turn into dragons, but I experienced less genuine sorrow when I saw their pain rather than when I saw what Elena was going through, and I felt more like it was a massive inconvenience. It doesn't help that they added an unnecessary level of anxiety to the game, like the constant anticipation that something you're doing is going to go wrong, which was already there from the madness mechanic I mentioned earlier, except here it's a constant until a certain point in the game when all of it is rendered moot. Why implement this in the first place if you're not going to use it until the end? Do you want me to have a migraine every time I play this game thinking about how I'm going to have to micromanage everything I do and get back in time to feed the kids? If I wanted to play Single Parent Simulator, I'd play The Walking Dead again and cry over that. Thank you very much.
Hello? You need to be quiet.
sorry, I really did enjoy my time with Dragonstar, but mechanically wise, the little sisters really ground my gears to the point I took a year's hiatus from the game in order to avoid having to deal with it again. I think what it was trying to do was to instill a sense of urgency with every action you took, and to emphasize the tragedy as well as the anxiety of the lives of the witches. Which it does, but I believe it is at the game's detriment rather than its benefit. The narrative of Dragonstar actually packs a few story beats that kept me interested. There's an underlying mystery as to what caused the incident years ago that wiped out the majority of the witch population, a secret organization called the Crows intending on exploiting the witches that have already turned into dragons for nefarious purposes. We also have the monarchy, which has a near obsession with wiping out the witches. That seems normal for this sort of story, right? Nothing strange about that, right? Well, let's just say the Emperor talks about witches in such a way that it'd make Jean-Claude Frollo blush. A big reason I returned to Dragonstar is because I wanted to see how the story resolved itself, which, good news, despite a few obvious twists, I thought it wrapped up rather nicely. The world building doesn't distract from the story, which can be a problem in these sort of fantasy narratives. You find out more about the characters as the mysteries are revealed, gradually showing you their true colors, their hopes, their fears, etc. Your main witch crew of Manessa, Lafayette, Carlotta, and Caricacro all have their quirks that may lead you to get attached to them. Not to mention that in addition to the game's dialogue, there are romances for each of the main female characters, which does help flesh them out a little bit more. While they do fall into a few obvious tropes, the writing does help them grow beyond that, with maybe the exception of Caricacro, since she stays relatively stagnant throughout the game, tsundere curse and all. Not a bad thing, since flat characters are needed in every story. It's only when you compare her romance arc to the other three that she comes off a little lackluster. If she's your waifu, I'm sorry, but I found the other three more compelling. There's no other characters I need to talk about. Not at all. Full disclosure, I am going to talk about an optional character here, so if you don't want spoilers for the game, skip to this timestamp here. Additionally, there are some uncomfortable topics around characters appearing to look like children, but the game treats them as fully functioning adults or soon-to-be adults. I heavily criticize this bit, so if you don't want to know the details, here's your timestamp. There is another character you can unlock later on that is entirely dependent on if you manage to keep the little sisters from turning into dragons. Her name is Faria, and she starts off as another little sister, but is trained into a more well-rounded witch. Here's the thing about her. She wields the earth element as her proficiency, which is the last element you need for your party to be completely well-rounded and be able to take on anything. Problem lies in the fact that, well... Hi, I may look 12, but I'm actually
1,000 years old!
Okay, while she's not exactly a kid the same age as the other sisters, she still starts off as one, and matures as the story goes on, eventually having the potential becoming the next big sister and joining the party. As an adult, or from what I can tell by the in-game text, is the equivalent to one. So, fun thing about my playthrough, I used her in battle as little as possible, and when I did use her, she was a meat shield so I could keep the other party members safe. Listen, I have nothing against a child character having a crush on an older character. That's natural, but it's the fact that you can actually get an affinity ending with her that suggests that there's a little more to their relationship than initially thought. And while not blatantly romantic like the other characters, there's enough red flags in this to line a Florida highway during daylight savings time. Not to mention, she's easily the one character wearing the least amount of clothing in her dragon transformation, and I know what they're going for. Woo woo, schoolgirl transformation, senpai! But still, it makes me uncomfortable to the point I never used her. And I'll be honest, her inclusion in the game, despite it being optional to even get her depending on how you play, is what made me genuinely take pause before making this video. However, since she is optional, and according to what I've read online, most people don't actually get her on their first go because of the difficulties of micromanaging all the little sisters. And I didn't want to not talk about this game all because of an optional character you don't have to interact with, unless you're obsessed with achievements or trophies. Then you're out of luck and have no choice in the matter. In the end, I enjoyed my time with Star Varnir. It had all the cliches I expected, but it genuinely surprised me at moments, which, at the very least, warranted a mention. The combat was interesting enough, and with the exception of those two major sticking points I mentioned earlier, I'd say this title was worth a look. I wouldn't buy the game at full price, but it was worth the journey into the wilderness of madness. I'm Red Angel, and I'll see you next time.